So again, here's a few points to be thinking about as we dive into our discovery of the language translation inside your ClickLearn project. Just real quick, let's highlight these points that I've made. The localization really is going to break the language barrier for your organization. So it's going to make it easier for your content users to adopt new systems and and their processes, because they can easily navigate the application by visualizing and hearing it in their own native language. There are two ways to the localization. The first one, the quick version, if you will, is that if you don't need to use replay to capture the screens in the native language inside your user interface, if it's going to remain as your primary language, you'll be able to very quickly just simply use the UI interface for English to be able to do the localization. The more methodical version is going to be using replay, and you'll use that replay for every one of the recordings that you'll have created when switching your user interface to capture the screen, in addition to doing the text and the spoken word translation. Do you have more than just one or two languages? Multiple languages are not a problem. If you've ever taken a look at our homepage, our webpage, or any of our material, we have at least 45 different languages, and many of those languages have dialects for different countries all around the world, or even different regions or areas inside of a country. So you really, the doors are wide open for you to be able to explore our list, look to see if we do have any of the languages for where you might have businesses located globally. And then we'll touch a little bit on the language settings to refine any of the translations or to make any kind of corrections. And I'm going to show you, it might be a little unknown place where the language settings actually are. So I'm going to take some time and show you those places and spaces inside your ClickLearn project. So here's my little outline for what the life cycle or the cycle of language translation is all about in the ClickLearn world. Starting at the very top of our cycle, you can see, have you made your decision for multiple languages? How many languages do you think you'd like to be able to translate your materials into? We'll take a look at that when we get to the language settings. Once you've decided that, the next choice will be, do you want to do that quick version? Is your application always going to be English only? If your user interface will never change, if those profile ID settings are fixed, you'll be able to see how you can use English as your user interface and just simply go through the localization, the producing and publishing. Otherwise, with the methodical method, you will need to be considerate of the recordings that you've created. You'll need to make sure that your recording will be started at the same page where your recording is going to need to recapture using replay where those steps are. And then after you've done the replay, you take it through the localization. And then finally, you go through the localization itself. If you have multiple languages, each one of the languages will have its own little box for you to be able to run the analyzer against, for you to then begin the translation for each one of those languages. And it'll take you step-by-step guided. We'll see that here in just a moment. Finally, once you've gone through all of your processes, you produce and publish your material. If you have an existing recorded project that you've already made some versionings and you want to add the languages at a later time, you definitely can. And then it is just a matter of reproducing the material, so that way you'll have gone through the localization and you'll be able to reproduce the material to now include all of those newly created language versions that you've just done. Okay, so before we get to it, I want to make sure that we've got these processes now. We understand that the quick versus the methodical approach to the localization is really a decision we've already made. We're going to take a walk through that translation process, the steps, the assets, things like images that you may have brought in, and the structure elements. You always have to have your material on the structure. That's what ClickLearn always looks at when you go through producing and publishing, so keep that top of mind as well. You're going to view an example of how the replay is used to support the multilingual screenshots, and then we'll take a high-level look at the language settings. So we might go ahead and take a look at the language settings first, because that will help you to set in place all of the rest of those tiles or those bullet points as we go forward. All right, so what you're looking at here is a project that I have already set up. I do have the language settings showing. So how I got there is from within my project, I have my settings cog. When I select my settings cog, I come up here to this submenu and I select the language settings. The language settings are going to help me decide which one of the languages I want to add to do my recording, my localization in. In this particular example, I've selected 2 of them, and it's simply a matter of coming here to the new language list, and as you start typing to find the language, one of them, let's try, here we can try. You can see it'll bring you exactly to whatever that particular language is. If I want to come here and say, you can see, and then once you select it, it will be added to your list. Once you add that to your list, then you have a choice of the quick versus the methodical process. The quick is, notice this little icon here for the user interface language, the UI language. If I don't want to change any of the images are going to stay English. That even though it says the UI language, what it's actually implying is that I'm not going to use replay. I don't need to use replay to change the images, the screenshots, but I do want to have my Spanish. So it's going to be my Spanish language, but I'm going to set my image so that it's not going to have to go through the methodical version. So I've done that for both of my languages here. When you do go through that process, here's where your localization is. Yeah, we're going to save we played around a little bit. So even though I'm not going to be changing any of the images, I do still need to take it through the localization process. I have already completed my Spanish. You can see that it's now complete. And the French has got some replays that are missing. I have here a tile that I can go ahead and start the translation, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to highlight the French language, I'm going to run the analyzer, and it's going to read through and look through this particular item that I know I no longer have on that page. So now, with my recording highlighted, or with my language, highlighted, we're going to start the translation. This is going to pop up a box that's going to have 3 separate areas for me to be able to take my language through. The first one is the steps. Here with the steps, there will be amber colored icons that are going to be for each one of the steps. And because I've selected the dashboard tile for the French, as I click, the auto translate will become available. And when I do click that, it's going to go through every one of the steps for every recording that's on my structure. And it's going to automatically translate that for me. From here, the next step would be that I save my work and then I continue to the next tab. The next tab is the Assets tab. This is typically images that you would have for maybe your if you've added any your company identity, any branding material. And so there are a variety of items that we have added here. There's some PDF documents that have been added. So we don't need to translate any of those because they're all images. There's nothing that we need to change as far as any text that would be inside or a PNG that's a picture. So those we can choose to just go right to the structure. And from the structure, if there has been any materials that have been added to it, This particular material that I'm showing today is from one of our organizations. It's a sandbox that we use for our Oracle accounts. So you can see that I have already done some customization. So I did use the publishing templates to make some updates or changes to it. And then if there's anything here that I need to go ahead and have automatically translated, I can come here, I use the auto translate, and then all of the material is you'll see all of these icons that are now, well, they're not amber colored, they're all green because they have already been translated. You can see where all the translation has been done. So once I go through all of these, I choose my save button, and then I'll run it back through my analyzer, and it will show me that I have, that I've completed my process. From here, I can then go through producing and publishing my material. And once I produce and publish the material, we'll take a look here real quick. I have already produced and published. Keep in mind, we do have versioning that we can go through as well. I now have a link for every one of these work instructions. Depending upon if your organization has different instances for the different languages in those different countries, you can choose that initial language, copy the link, and then paste it into your browser window. You can use the click on it, the HTML link. You can add it to your SharePoint site if you want to create a channel in your SharePoint site for your end users to be able to access the material. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples right now on how you can take the material that you've just created and what it looks like from a browser window. All right, here's a couple of examples. The first one here is what you had just seen inside of our project. And when I come here to the top right-hand corner, notice the little silver globe icon. When you do language translation, you'll then be presented with this drop-down so that you can then instruct your end users whichever language it is that they want to be able to view the material in. So we'll take a look at it in the Spanish version first, if you'd like. And ClickLearn now changes the view. If I come into any of these dashboard tiles, I could look at my recordings and notice that the image this is the quick version. So this is how ClickLearn will change all of the language. It'll change the audio. I'm not sure if it'll be able to. And so the language, again, you can select male and female voices to make it sound very natural, whichever your comfort level is. And here then you can see in the Show Me video, it's going to be very linear and it's going to take the end users through. Now, keep in mind, again, the quick version is showing you that the images are all going to be English only because we did not go through using the replay to be able to change those images. So this is one way. Let me just step back out of here. The other one is here. It is the same portal, but in this particular project, this is now going to show you, by using replay, what it will look like with the images that are changed as well. So again, we'll stick with our Spanish version. So here's our accounting. This is what we were looking at in the previous learning portal. And so with the English view, you can see my image is going to be in English. Now when I come out and I switch to Spanish, because I used replay, I did the methodical version and took it through the individual tiles for the translation. When I come back in here and I look at these same work instructions, now you can see that it was set up for the replay to take the work instructions and it followed step by step. It captured the screens with the user interface also in the same language as the translation for the text and the spoken word. And so now, again, you'll be able to see it all complete, full screen. Everything has been changed and translated over. So ClickLearn is very careful about how well it can help you to be able to translate that content so that your end users, if they do have different languages that they would like to be able to see or you'd be able to present for them, this is really a great tool. So let's come back here one more time into our settings, and I'm going to bring you once again to the language settings. We did talk about the languages here to be able to set up in the beginning. You do also have the ability to edit if you want to customize and control what the instruction language is. This language templater. Now, for those of you that might be developers or BAs that really, really like to get deep in the weeds, this is the place where you can come and affect those change. Notice that we have the ClickLearn Common Language, and we have a variety of places that as you click and go through each one of these, you can affect the change. You also have the ability to do that with, here we have the process instructions. You can go further deep into, here's our Excel spreadsheet that you can use. So you can actually affect change for every one of the connectors that we have as well. There are a lot of people that say, and I'm using this one as an example, but I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some accounts that I've worked with that they say, we don't like it to say to click on something because you're clicking everything. You're clicking on a link, you're clicking on a page, you're clicking on a drop-down menu. So if it just simply says to click something, here's where you can make that change. You can remove this text, you can save the changes as you go along, and the really neat thing about getting deep in the weeds here is that this changes empirically, meaning that no matter where that click on will be displayed in the templates, it will change for every one of those steps. You do always have the ability to go in and edit each individual step, but keep in mind, when you do it that way, you're only making changes to that one step and that one recording for that one project. When you make the changes here, it's empirically. It'll change for every time you create a recording. Instead of the step saying click on something, it'll simply say click, and then it'll add the rest of the templated text. Very powerful feature. Don't be afraid to use it. It's right here at your fingertips for you to be able to touch and use. And then further down below here, we have what we call the forced language compliance. Previously, it used to be enabled. And what this means here, enabling this option where it says that it requires a fully localized list of languages. What ClickLearn's intent is here is that if you want to be absolutely sure that when you take your material through the localization part, that you go through the analyzer, that you do the translation, ClickLearn will not allow you to produce and publish that material unless every one of your languages has been fully localized. So what we've done instead is we've placed it here on the language settings, and we have it so that it is not mandatory. If you want to make it so that you can force it, this is where you're going to come to be able to make that change for the compliancy. Okay, so are you team English UI or are you team full localization? The choice is yours. Really, what's in it for your organization? First of all, your training cost reductions are going to be huge. One application creates those multiple outputs. That's the core of ClickLearn. You'll always have that. You must go through. But the huge savings here is going to be in the translation services. If you experience that right now, if you do have international languages and you outsource it to a translation service and it comes back, might be a little bit of a sticker shock sometime. Here, it's inside ClickLearn. It's there for you to be able to use. Take advantage of it. We have some great ClickLearn product documentation that will take you step by step through that. We've got a great implementation team that will help you be able to get through those initial steps so that you can confidently do your own language translation. The other item, the IT support cost savings, is your content users will be engaging in their own language inside your application. It should really help to reduce the amount of support tickets for help, because if there is a language barrier or some kind of misinterpretation, where are your content users going to go? They're going to go to your help desk first. This should be a real time saver for everyone because your content users are going to be engaged. Your IT support team will have other areas, I'm sure, that they'll need support and help on. Big time savings there. And then finally, it just overall, it's going to increase your content users' engagement level in your system. They will become engaged. And if you do take advantage of ClickLearn's dashboard analytics, you'll be able to see the engagement. You'll be able to see the people using your learning materials that's been created, translated into their language to help them use that content going forward in your application. So thanks for joining today's event. Just a few more thoughts here to keep top of mind is one of the things, whether you identify your organization uses a static language user interface or it allows those profile settings for different languages, either way, you're on your way to optimizing the learning materials you've created for your content users. Remember that you can choose the language for both the written text and the spoken word, and you can choose the voice. Do an initial review of the templated text that ClickLearn provides, and if you want to make changes empirically, just like what you had seen, go to the language settings and make those changes there. Finally, keeping the content users top of mind when creating the content will dramatically improve the content that you create. When you start thinking about the end game, what are the people going to be touching? What are they most likely to use? And how are they most likely to enjoy or engage using it? The different learning styles are going to be coupled with the native language of the content users, and that's going to keep them engaged and quickly adopting your system. So thanks again for staying with me, and now stay tuned for the next session that's coming at you. Have a good rest of your day.